Welcome to Real Estate Real World, where we talk to the movers, shakers, and leaders that are getting it done right now in the real estate industry and beyond. Your host, Marguerite Crespillo, started this podcast simply dedicated to call people about what's really happening in this crazy roller coaster ride of real estate. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and stay up to date on the newest stuff by adding yourself to the list at www.realestaterealworld.com. Now your host, Marguerite Crespillo.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Real Estate Real World. I'm Marguerite Crespillo, your host, and I'm very excited today to have somebody who I've watched over the last couple years, actually probably I think 4 or 5 years now, who has just skyrocketed in success in all different areas, and it's not surprising at all. So let me read a little bit about her real quick, and then we'll jump in. Gogo Bethke, a Romanian immigrant, arrived in America in 2003 with little knowledge of English, but an abundance of resilience and tenacity. Her journey led her through various roles, from being an au pair to a data entry clerk, jewelry sales rep, food safety auditor, and waitress, which I think food servers are like the best real estate agents on the planet. A neighbor's suggestion introduced her to the world of real estate, where she has excelled. She is now seasoned coach, investor, leader of Gogo's real estate team. In 2018, she joined EXP and created Team Gogo, attracting over 100 agents to her team, which has since closed an astonishing $1.5 billion in sales. I think she has over 1,000 agents in her entire organization. Gogo's success extends beyond real estate. She's a recognized entrepreneur. Her accomplishments include the award-winning Agent Attraction Bootcamp, her own TV show, Gogopreneur. Gogo's story is a testament to transforming adversity into opportunity and realizing dreams through hard work and individuality. Welcome, my friend Gogo.
Oh, thank you so much. I did a video in the background. Stay true to myself, and I tagged you.
Thank you. So it's funny because I remember when you first joined EXP. So I've been here 7 years this month. And I remember when you first joined, and I remember hearing your name, and I looked at your social media profile. And I think at that time, things were just starting to take off for you on your social media. Because I want to say you had around, 8 or 10,000 followers. I can't remember. But then I just kept seeing it skyrocket and climb, and I've gotten to hear you speak a few times, and it's really exciting to watch you just bloom, I guess is the best word, and shine. You've helped a lot of people.
Thank you so much for having me. I remember when I saw you speak the first time, I think it was a Brent Gove event, and you killed it, and I walked up to you after, and I was like, you did so good, and I was just like, little Nemo.
You have far exceeded that. Yesterday I was talking to James, and last year I got the opportunity to interview Glenn at Build. And I've had Glenn on my podcast. I remember meeting him, and I was so nervous. I thought for sure I'm going to trip going up the steps or do something completely goofy. And I got lucky. Everything went perfect until the very last second. I said, "Thank you so much, Brent, for joining me today." And I'm like, oh my God, I called him Brent. I didn't call him Glenn. I was dying. And it was so funny because people thought it was funny and Glenn thought it was funny, but I was like mortified that I had made that huge mistake. Brent thought it was great.
Yeah. But, hey, it happens. It happens.
So I would love to know a little bit more about your story, your background. Like why did you come to America? What happened? What led you to that?
That's a great question. So it's Eddie Murphy. I know. I always put it out there somewhere because I believe somebody who knows Eddie Murphy, right? So one day I get to meet that man. But I was born and raised in communism. So Romania was a communist country until 89. I was born in 81. So the first 8 years of my life, I lived in communism. And there are certain things of that I remember. And when Ceausescu, our leader, was killed, my dad went and bought a color TV and a VCR player. And he came home with 2 DVDs, and it was 48 Hours by Eddie Murphy. And I just remember, first of all, until that moment, I've never seen a Black person. Because when you live in communism, you do not have access to the Western world. You only have access to what's going on in your neck of the woods. And there was no newspaper, there was no TV or radio or anything was inland. Like you had no access to the rest of the world. And so I remember seeing him, and he just seemed so happy. to me. I was like, oh my gosh, he's one of the funniest thing I've ever seen. He was just so happy and so full of life. And I just remember, I'm like, I want to go where that man is at because he's so happy. I thought he must be happy because of where he's at. And what do I know? I was 7 going on 8. So that's like my first recollection. It's funny how life works because you put these like subconscious goals out there to the universe, and then the universe works in your favor and works until it figures out a way. And so not until I was 21, I was in college my second year. So I went to college in Hungary. I was born and raised in Transylvania, Romania. But since I'm Hungarian by nationality, I'm considered minority, right? And so minorities from Romania can go to college in Hungary, Hungarian minorities. So I did, and I got scholarship and all that. But in my third year of college, I had to pass an English exam, a pretty high level English exam, and I didn't speak English at all. So I was like, the easiest would be to go where the people are that speak it and then learn it and then come back and take the exam. So I applied for 3 jobs, an au pair job. Believe it or not, Marguerite, I applied to work in the middle of the ocean on an oil rig. Would you thank God that God doesn't answer all of our prayers? And then I
Oh my
applied
goodness.
to work on a cruise ship. So I pretty much got all 3 jobs, but the au pair company called first. So that's how I came to be an au pair. And I lived here for about 2 months. I met my husband in a bar, because where else do you meet a good man? And we've been married 20 years since, and happily with 2 kids and all that. So I came to the US, I think, subconsciously for a good life. I also always didn't really fit in at home, right? Like I was just balls to the walls, like a there's an elephant in a china shop, right? If I wanted something, everybody get out of my way. I was very opinionated. I was a loudmouth, and that doesn't work well in communism, where everybody works for the greater good and everybody hush. And I was like, oh, this is not for me. Like, I have things to do and things to say. And so I knew I need to get out of there because I don't belong there. I always joke and say that God made a mistake and accidentally dropped me off over there. And then he's like, here's an airplane ticket because you were meant to be here. I think this is like my place to be, where there's freedom, where you can choose to do. My culture is still the woman's place is in the kitchen. And don't get me wrong, I'm a great cook, but yeah, you can't force me. Yeah.
You're
I'm so
so
much
much
more than
more than
that.
that.
Exactly. So I believe that we can do it all, whatever we feel like we can or want to. And so I came to a free world where I can practice what I speak my mind and practice whatever religion and however I want to live my life and build whatever business with no limit. In our culture, there's still, in Romania, it still matters if you have college education or not. It still matters who your parents are and what bloodline you're from. It still matters how much money you have, right? It's still very much a corrupt way of growing. And I could never, could you imagine me and corruption? I would be, nope.
It's interesting because I live within about a 2-mile radius, 2-hour radius of where I grew up. So I've not gone far. And I hear people, especially with the political environment in our world and things like that, people are so critical of where we live.
Oh,
And
I have plenty of places where we can ship them for 3 months. They'll come. They'll come by on the ground.
and that's what I always want to say. You don't have any concept of what it's like. If you think it's so bad here, go
One of
live
my first.
somewhere like you described a
That's my
few
question
months,
is, and the answer is usually
Yeah.
none. They've never been outside of the US. So I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, just
Yeah. I know I wish there was more of that because I haven't traveled a lot. I've not extensively, but I've been enough and I've known enough people that we have it
oh
pretty damn good here. And even where I live in California, there's so much criticism about it. I don't love the politics and the taxes here, but I still feel like I live in one of the best places on earth. And I'm so grateful for where I live. So I guess I would just love people to be a little more grateful and
I mean, that's what
accepting
I literally talked
of.
about this yesterday, and it's 11:11, so I always have to screenshot when it's repeating numbers.
Oh,
So I talked about this yesterday with someone who's from India, talking about our hunger and our work ethic, right? And where some people might look at that, what I have going for me was a negative thing, right? Like communism and Eastern Europe and all of that. It's actually what keeps the hunger in my heart. It's actually what has allows me to have the ability to compare, to work so hard so that my children never know that, to work so hard so I never experience that again, right? So it gives me that drive and hunger where most people don't have that. It was served to you a silver platter and they don't even know how good they have it. So then they don't have a desire to achieve more because it was just always there. So I think it's what allows me to, it's what I use pretty much to win.
So how has that impacted? Has that caused issues in your relationship at all? Because, well, I've been with my husband for 37 years and I'm very
Yeah.
driven, a lot like you. And so sometimes with my husband, he's like, can you just
Yeah, no.
relax?
So I don't relax. I don't know how to relax. My husband will tell you that. He's like, "Oh my God, go just sit down for a minute." I'm like, "And do what? Stare at the wall? I can't. Like, what are we doing?" I remember one time my husband asking me, "Is it ever going to be good enough for you?" And it did stop me in my track. I was like, "Whoa." I'm like,
Question.
"Something's wrong with me." Because the word content gives me the weebie-jeebies. Like I'm like, nope, never. And that's truly the answer. No, it's never going to be good enough for me. It's not that I want more than I don't look at it. There are things that I don't have. I look at it of if I can do this, then what else can I do? And if I can do that, then what else can I do? So I'm chasing my next level. So then one day when I die and I'm hopefully at the pearly gates of heaven, right? I can look back and be like, every skill that God given me, that put inside of me, I have pushed it to the limit. I want to make him proud. I want to make my parents proud. I want to make me proud. I want to know that I lived and I did. Like I heard this quote. Do you know Dr. Wayne Dyer? I love him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I heard this quote from him. He said, some people live for 90 years and some people live 1 year 90 times.
I'm sure that you got the opportunity to spend some time with
Mm.
Rick Jiha, who passed away last week. And we were at his celebration of life, which was at the Oakland Coliseum. First of all, right? Whose memorial service is at Oakland Coliseum? There was about 1,500 people there.
Oh
It
my
was
God.
insanity. And what I love the most about Rick is while I know that he would probably still love to be here, I feel like what you were just saying, he lived every moment. He did every single thing. And there was never a moment that you did not know he loved you or was proud of you or thought you were amazing because he made it such an attempt to tell everybody. And so my theme has been a lot this week to live more like Rick and what he did and make a greater
Yeah.
impact. And you've done pretty amazing, not just with your personal life and all that you do, but you've become quite an inspiration to a lot of the agents because now you have what, like almost 80,000 followers or something insane on Instagram. How did, because a lot of what you talk about is social media and you've built quite a business via social media. Was there a day or a time when you thought, hey, I'm going to go do this? Or was it just something you just did and it came
Funny
together?
because I literally did a speech on this a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, it wasn't like I woke up one day and be like, I grew up, I'm gonna be the social media queen of real estate. Never even crossed my mind, right? It was out of necessity, right? Like I'm a researcher, like I'm the biggest nerd you'll ever meet, and I'm also the biggest loser for whatever reason. I'm super competitive, and I don't know why I'm just am. This is how God created me to be. If I'm doing anything, I'm going to be on the top of the list or I'm not doing it. If it's not important to me, I'm like, I don't care if it's on the bottom. What do I care? But if it's something that I want to do and pursue, I'm going to be on top of that list or I'm going to die trying. And so when I got into real estate, I researched all of the top producers. I started with a company called Real Estate One. And I researched all of the top producers. I would go into their offices and ask them questions is, hey, what do you do? What got you where you at? How long you been in the industry? What systems do you use? Do you buy leads? Do you do Zillow? Do you door knock? Do you cold call? Do you da 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 da? And I realized the long list of things that they were all doing then, or I wasn't able to, or I wasn't willing. And that pretty much left me. And the other thing that you have to keep in mind is that I had no sphere. So where most of the people are like, even though they're like, I never sold real estate, like where am I going to start? Imagine not knowing anyone, having a name that people can pronounce and barely speak in English, has no college education, no sales experience. Like I didn't even know what PIT, right? And so when I researched all of them, I realized the long list of things that I couldn't do, I couldn't afford or wasn't willing to, like door knocking. I'm 5'2" little blondie, so no thank you, with an accent, and my name is Gogo, so wrong door knocking business. And so that pretty much left me with, so then I was okay, then where are my customers? Who's going to buy a house from me? And I said, strangers. I said, okay, where are strangers? On Facebook. because at the time Instagram and TikTok didn't even exist, and Instagram wasn't a thing yet. So I started Gogo's Real Estate on Facebook, and then out of necessity, I had to figure out how to push all of those buttons, and what happens if I push this, and what happens if I post that, and how about a picture, how about a video, how about a description, which one does better, how do I post a link, what happens if they push the link, right, click the link, and those kind of things. So over time, it just, when you have a business page, it gives you algorithm, and then the algorithm shows you what happens when, right? So it shows you how old are your followers, where are they located, what time of the day do they log in, what day, which day of the week you have most traffic on, like those kind of things, right? And then it becomes a business, just like everybody else who, let's say, they're cold callers, and every morning from 8 to 11 they're cold calling. My thing is social media. That means I have to post. That is my job. If I don't post, we don't eat.
You know what I love? You posted the other day when you were trying to get, you were arguing with yourself on whether you wanted to do your model explained that you do every week. Do you remember that post? And you said that you had done that every single week for
Oh, I
200
was.
and
It was one of those Wednesdays. So just so everybody knows what we are talking about, every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. we do a presentation that's called EXP Explain, but we call it Wine, not EXP. It's like a play on words, right? And it's an EXP explained to agents who are considering coming to EXP, and it's the same presentation over and over again, right? It takes me about an hour and a half, depending how many questions people have, but never less than an hour. So usually it's an hour, 10 minutes, somewhere an hour and a half. And I do that every Wednesday, and I've done it since I joined the company. Sometimes one person shows up. The most I ever had was 30 some people show up, right? So now we are talking, imagine if you're already exhausted and you show up to do the same presentation for the 269th time, and there's one person on the call. And I did it again. And then when I got off that call, even more exhausted, right? I look back at my office, and I have a cute office. I love my office. And I look back at my office, and I did a video, and I sat down literally and I did the math. I said, okay, how many Wednesdays have passed since October 25th of 2018? And it's 269. Now, granted, lately I have had help. So last year we started where our generals fill in. So a general is an agent who has brought at least 5 agents to their own frontline and organization. So now they fill in. Like today we have a guest, right? But I've probably done over 220, 230 of those myself out of the 269 in the last 5 years. So it's the monotone. Do you know
and
what
what
they say? Doing the things even after you lost the passion for it, or lost the oomph for it, and you're still doing it because that's what it works, and that's what's going to take you to the next level. And I think most people stop when it gets hard. And one of my favorite quote is, who was the boxer? Muhammad Ali. They
Muhammad
asked
Ali?
him how many sit-ups does he do, and he said, "I don't start counting until it hurts." And I didn't
Yeah.
start counting until it
You know,
hurts, and
I love that.
169 times. So I think I have a very good long work ethic, because I didn't start hurting until 269 time I was doing the same presentation.
And it's such a tribute. I think consistency is the word that people love to avoid more than anything in this industry. We
Instant
talked last week.
gratification. And there is no such a thing as overnight success. There was an amazing
Yeah.
commercial by Target a few years ago during the Olympics, and they showed what it takes for the Olympians to be an Olympian, right? And they showed that they were like in diapers skiing. And they were waking up at 3:30 in the morning for 19 years to ski 5 hours before they got to school at 8:30 in the morning. That's what they take. And then they
Yeah.
show their parents, and their parents getting ready and driving them here and driving them there, and da, 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 back in the car. And da, da, da. It is so much work, and it's so hard for everybody, the family too. Like my children yesterday, my son is going on a golf tournament, and he needed new stuff. I would have loved to be there. I would have loved to be able to see him get fitted and see the smile on his face when he gets his new like expensive golf stuff. Instead, I funded it, and I was here on calls, right? So there's a price to pay for. There isn't such a thing as overnight success, and certainly everything comes at a price, and some people are not willing to pay the price.
For sure. I've been 30 years in real estate, right? And for 30 years, I've sent out little letter about my life that I've sent out, and I've sent out them I've missed a few months. I'm not going to lie, but overall, I've sent them just about every month since I got started in real estate. And I also raised my kids when I got into real estate. My 28-year-old had just been born. So my kids are now, grown. And I asked them one day, I said, what was it like growing up with a crazy real estate mom? And they both said we didn't know any different. But what we did know is that you were there more than most parents that had to work an 8 to 5 job, that couldn't get off of work. We were there. And that gave me some grace and feeling like I was able to create this life for them and being able to work and consistently. And so right now, what we're seeing is we're seeing quite a few agents with the market shifting and things adjusting. We're seeing agents either leaving the business or looking for side hustle or trying to figure out how to survive. What are you doing to adjust and help your people in your group get through these challenges in the
Yeah, I
current
always
market?
call being an entrepreneur or being in real estate, it's gosh, like sailing. The wind is always blowing. You just have to figure out what direction it's blowing from. Right? Never in the history of mankind ever been a time when people weren't exchanging homes. Like people always lived in homes, they always will be. There are people who always they have to move because a job, they have to move because kids, they have to move because of health, they have to move because of whatever, right? People are always moving. You just have to figure out your marketing technique. It's always comes down to the best marketer wins. If your name exists in the industry in the good times, it will exist in the industry in the bad times. It doesn't change maybe the amount of transaction, how they get to you, how many of them you get to do. But other than that, it's not like it suddenly disappears. Now, the problem is when people don't build, when they build their business on a third party service, right? If that service, like the Zillows of the world or something, if those go out of business, that's what you're going to do, right? I always built a brand around myself. So it never changed for me. We actually are doing just as well. We're a little down, but we're also down 2 agents on my small team, right? I never look at, I guess my advice on this one, don't look at the news. I don't ever look at, and this might sound like an ostrich with my head in the sand, but really I just act like it's not there and I just continue doing what I'm doing for the transactions to work. And you'll see when, especially when you're doing social media, to make the post that you always did and it used to work and it suddenly it's not working. You're like, oh, I guess something changed. Let me see, maybe I post this instead and let's see how that, oh, this one works. Oh, okay, cool. So then I'm gonna do more of this, right? So if I continue doing what I did 12 years ago in social media today, I would be out of business too. It's not
100%.
that I'm still using the same avenue. I'm still using social media. Just what I do, when I do it, how I do it, how much of that I'm doing changed. And that's going to continuously change because you see what's happening to your post when you're posting it and if you're not having the reaction as you hope. So I think my big thing is build a strong brand, build a strong foundation where your name is known in an area or online. And then you never have to worry about where your leads are going to come from because people have to move all the time.
And my favorite quote is I'm in charge of my own economy, right? So it's up to me. And if I'm sitting around waiting for someone else to come tell me how to do it
Yeah.
or what to do. And I love what you said about your own brand because to me, people get really caught up in the brand of a company. And what I've always said is brand only matters when you have nothing else, right? And meaning that if you're relying on the company brand and not relying on your own brand, then you're going to struggle,
Yeah.
just like you said. And so, what is, as we wrap up today, because
I
I know
do
you
want to
got
add on
a
to that
busy
super
day and a
quick,
lot
then I
going
forgot to mention. I think it's super important to have multiple revenues of income, right? So I'm not reliant on just commissions only. And because of that, it doesn't affect me what's happening on the market. I have multiple revenues of income, right? We have real estate investments, anything from syndications to long-term rentals, short-term rentals, our second home, our regular home. We have 9 different companies. I have 2 online boot camps. I have an online webinar. I have coaching, right? And I do so when you have multiple, I never forget it. Mark Z explained me this one. If you have one listing and that deal falls apart, that's 100% of your income. If you have 10 listings and one falls
Absolutely.
apart, that's 10% of your income. Doesn't hurt that bad, does it? No, fell apart, whatever. It's just a small
No.
portion, right? So what I want you to concentrate on is having multiple revenues of income. Maybe start a coaching lag, maybe start webinars, maybe start an online boot camp. Maybe there's a million ways how you can do this, right? And start collecting income from all of these different sources, so you don't have to be so reliant on commissions only.
Which is brilliant, and which is why you are Marie Forleo calls it a multi-passionate
Oh, that's awesome.
entrepreneur.
I have
She's
to
one of
write it
my
down
favorite,
more.
multi-passionate entrepreneur. Because sometimes I'm sure you've heard this before. They're like, "Oh, just stick to what you're good at in this one area." And
Oh
I get
gosh,
excited
no.
about lots
Oh
of
god,
different
I'm so
things.
all over the place and in a good way. Like I'm everywhere, as everybody should be. Yeah, I got one
Absolutely.
talent.
You know what I love that you said, and we'll wrap up with this, that you said earlier, is that you don't want to die having wasted any of the talents that God
In
gave
other
you.
ways, don't die with the music inside your soul.
Thank you so much, Gogo, for being here today. We could probably talk for a couple hours, but I know you have an extremely busy schedule. And I know my virtual assistant, Mark, was so excited you were going to be on the show today. Are you really going to interview Gogo? He's so excited. So thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward to seeing you at the next event, probably Cabo or something like that at the next big event. And if anyone wants to get a hold of you, they can find you very easily on Instagram, social media, and all of her websites and things. We'll be posting it all in the show notes. So thank you again for joining us today. You look fabulous, and I look forward to seeing
Thank
you
you so
again
much for
soon.
having me. Bye. Have a good day.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. All right. Have an amazing day and follow us on all the social media channels. And we look forward to hearing from you soon. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us today on Real Estate Real World, where we talk with masters and leaders in real estate and beyond on how we can raise the bar in our industry. Please subscribe over on iTunes. And while you're there, be sure to give us a review. Your reviews encourage us and help others find our podcast. For show notes and hot topics on what's going on right now in our real estate industry, hop on over to www.realestaterealworld.com and add your name to our email. Thanks again for listening. And go out there, be a part of the elite masterclass in raising the bar on the real estate industry.